for Bible and Film class. I will be presenting my final project for Bible and Film class by focusing on women in Bible film. So one of the themes that we really kind of been touching a lot in this course this semester was just the lack of female presence in Bible films in general. And with this in mind, I really wanted to focus in on the goal of exploring the topic of women in Bible film more closely, specifically by looking at three main factors. The first, looking at some of the actual female Bible stories within the actual Bible. And to just limit my parameters so I don't go off on this whole tangent for 3 hours or something, or 20 pages, I'll be focusing on just 3 female Bible stories specifically for these research purposes. The second, looking at what, if any, Bible films have been adapted around those female-oriented Bible stories. And third, analyzing why or why not those films got made. So without further ado, let me look upon, let's go over these 3 female Bible stories I will be focusing on. When choosing which 3 I was going to focus on, I really wanted to think about it from a producer's perspective, not just picking which ones were personally my favorite, but actually thinking about, okay, which stories would make sense to be produced as a film because they are accessible to large audiences, is palatable to all sorts of ages and demographics and so forth. So with that criteria in mind, I kind of narrowed it down to these 3. First, the Virgin Mary. She's best known, obviously, as being the mother of Jesus. So she is one of the most iconic, well-known women in the Bible. So it would make sense for someone to be interested in making a movie about her. Audiences would be familiar with who she is, to be able to see it, etc., etc. The second is Deborah. Deborah is absolutely a badass. Her story is amazing. There's action, there's betrayal, there's all sorts of things that I think would make sense as a film. And actually, for my reading response, I looked into trying to find movies for Deborah, and because I didn't find any, that's what really started this whole idea for this final project in the first place. How is it that Deborah, with such an enticing story, doesn't have her own movie? And is this the same for other really enticing characters that happen to be female in the Bible? And then the third person I'll be looking at is Esther. So Esther, like Deborah, does help save her people from genocide and enslavement and so forth, and she's best known as being the Jewish queen. She's also a badass, right? So these are the 3 people that I will be focusing on. So without further ado, let's get started with looking at Mary in film. So like I said before, Mary, iconic, known all over the world. I would say that she's probably one of the more well-known names from the Bible as a whole, not just specifically female characters, but characters as a whole. Her name seems to go hand in hand with Jesus, right? So I was very surprised at finding out that there wasn't as much in film about her as I thought there would be. And here are the top 2 that I found regarding Mary. The first one is Mary, Mother of Jesus. It's a 1999 film, and it stars Christian Bale as Jesus and Pernilla August as Mary. The film basically follows Jesus' stories through the eyes of his mother, which would be Mary. And what really stuck out to me here is that even though Christian Bale is this huge actor nowadays, maybe he wasn't in 1999, because this movie was made to be shown straight into television. So it's a film production, straight to television type of project. It never made it onto the big silver screen, which I was very surprised about. And the other one that I found was 2012's Mary of Nazareth. This film was directed by Giacomo Campiotti and stars Elisa Young. It's an Italian, German, Spanish movie type of collaboration, and similarly, it was made for as a television movie. It was never made for that big screen either. So this is a theme that I'm going to get at as we go along, but this kind of piqued my interest. Why is it that maybe people are willing to make Bible films on Mary, but only if it goes straight to television and not as a big blockbuster movie? So now let's move on to Deborah. And again, No adaptations? What? Deborah, out of all people, I mean, she's the only female judge in the entire Bible. She's this soldier type of character. She's independent, she's fierce. The Israelites weren't even willing to go to battle if it wasn't with her being there with them. They wanted her there because that's how powerful a presence she seems to have. She's smart. She sounds beautiful. In my head, she's beautiful, right? And her story is captivating. There's drama, there's twists, there's presence, and of course, there's a lot of dedication to God. So if I'm a filmmaker who is interested in doing it for evangelicizing purposes, this is still a really good story to go to. That would just also adhere to the taste of a wider audience that's not just specifically Christian. But I wasn't able to find any adaptations. Instead, what I did find was first is Deborah 13, Servant of God. It's a 2009 BBC made for TV film adaptation, where it's basically a young 13-year-old girl who's named Deborah, who's very dedicated to God in a modern setting. So it's not really the same thing necessarily. And then the other thing I found was Deborah's Army, 2014. It's an animated television series, so it's not even a movie, it's a TV show. And here's a clip that I just loved watching. I've linked a lot of things in this PowerPoint, but I'm not showing necessarily everything, just because I don't think it's always necessary, but this one, amazing. Let's see what it is.
Good, General. What is it this time?
You must take 10,000 men to the Kishon River, where you will find Sisera and his army. God will deliver him into your hands.
Sisera? Have you seen his army? Iron chariots. What do we have compared to that?
God.
Okay. We'll go. But only if you come with us.
I'll come along, but know this. The victory will not belong to you. People will say that a woman defeated Sisera. Rise! This is the day that God gives Sisera into your hands.
Just look at this image, how powerful and commanding her presence is. They would only go if she went, and her saying a woman will defeat Sisera. It's just so powerful. When I read in the Bible, it definitely stuck out to me. And if this was a live action, it could be a really powerful, beautiful scene. So yeah, that's why I wanted to show that clip is specifically. So moving forward, Esther in film. So for Esther, I was pleasantly surprised that there was actually a lot more adaptations revolving Esther for some reason, not just one or two like we have seen with the other ones. Partly I think is because Esther is also a not just a character that we find within Christianity, but she's also a character for people who are Jewish as well. So for Esther, yes, we're looking at 2013's Book of Esther, which is right over here, as well as 1999's Esther. The 2013 version was directed by David A.R. White, starring Jen Lilly as Esther, and it was a television movie production as well. And then the 1999 version was directed by Raphael Mertes, starring Louise Lombard as the Queen Esther, and this is also a direct-to-television movie production. So far, almost everything we've seen has not really had a big blockbuster presence. I will make a side note that I just, thought about with Mary. There are big blockbuster movies that include Mary, but not any that star Mary, right? Where she's the main focus, where it's about her and not Jesus, or where it's about her story, but not in a horror film, gory type of way. So I just wanted to put that out there. But with Esther, I found my first more blockbuster type of big film with 2006's One Night with the King. This is a 26 movie directed by Michael O'Sagefeld, starring Tiffany DuPont. And it was actually made to go into a movie theater. It wasn't a direct to television thing. Unfortunately, it was a box office failure with the box office profits not even being able to cover its production budget. So they were at a deficit. So it's not great. But when you look at the trailer, it looks so different from the other ones. You can tell that this was supposed to be a Bible epic, starring and focusing on a woman. Look, with the music and everything.
The money may be raised by the confiscation of Jewish wealth and property. First, we must kill them all. Every last one of them.
An orphan who became a queen.
Suppose, my lady, a man offered you the kingdom.
The only gift I would accept is your heart.
I should give you a different name. Esther of Susa. A secret that could change everything.
So yes, I'll stop it there just so that we're not taking up too much time. But that gives you kind of a bit of reference on how big that movie was in terms of production, in terms of feeling like a big blockbuster movie with the sets, with the music, with the plot lines. There was romance in those 30 seconds we saw. There was conflict. There was a little bit of genocide in an ugly way, right? So yeah. So now let's go into a little bit more of analysis now that we have some good background. And throughout my research, these three big questions for analysis started popping up, right? The original one was, why are there not more female-led Bible films? And the second that I started kind of figuring out here was, wait, why is it that the films are more television rather than big screen productions? We're not seeing any big Hollywood ones, and anything we are seeing is kind of tiny, maybe a little bit underwhelming. Why? And then a follow-up question to that is this just an issue within religion? That we're seeing why women aren't represented much? Is it because just this religion happens to be a little bit too patriarchal, for example? Or is it just an issue within Bible film? Or is this an issue on a wider scale within our society? Whoops, sorry, I think my voice got cut off there a little bit. But yes, so what my answer is to this question. To begin, I want to focus first on Mary. Mary, obviously the mother of Jesus, doesn't even have her own movie, and it's absolutely ridiculous. And it begs the question why one of the biggest female characters in the Bible doesn't have her own story in the silver screen. Is it because her story is too dependent on Jesus for people to care? And I think on some scale for Mary in particular, she'll never be able to pass the Bechdel test because it is too dependent on that. And as if you put yourself in the shoes of a film producer, there's really no original story that I think would easily be something you could sell to a studio that says, this is why you should do it on a big screen. This is how we get people. Because there's always this slippery slope of, well, why don't we just do it on Jesus, right? But my point here today is that, okay, yes, Mary's might be a little bit of an exception there, but it's not just Mary that this is happening to. Deborah's story, for example, would be the perfect screenplay with all the story tropes that audiences love. It has, battle, it has a little bit of plot twists, it has the intensity, it has the action, but there's not a single adaptation out there, not even for television. Instead, what I found with my research is Esther was the only one with a big blockbuster film, but that film was a box office failure. One Night with the King, which is the photo right there on the side, had a budget of $20 million and only made $13.7 million at the box office. So it didn't even recoup its money back. So from a superficial scale, you can just be like, oh, it's because because of the patriarchy, right? Because we live in a patriarchal society, and I think, yes, that is a fair answer, but it is a little superficial. Hollywood epics have been produced, and those Bible Hollywood epics are incredibly whitewashed, and they still are decades and decades later. So it's not surprising to jump to this conclusion of, well, then just like there's this whitewash, kind of factor, there's also this gender disparity factor expressed within the production of Bible epics. Even in non-Bible regular Hollywood, right? Women are significantly out-earned by men. For example, in 2020, Forbes found that the top earning actor was Dwayne Johnson with a salary of $89 million, whereas the top earning actress for the year was Scarlett Johansson, earning $56 million. So that's a huge gap between them, right? And it even grows as the list goes down. Because there's women who are going to be making way, way less than Scarlett Johansson. Scarlett Johansson's the most famous one there, right? Don't get me wrong, what I'm not trying to say is that the patriarchy isn't a factor. I do believe it is. There's clearly an issue within the film industry as a whole for how women are portrayed and treated. Like the MCU is the biggest Hollywood machine that I can think of right now, and it wasn't until 2019 that they came out with the first female lead movie with Captain Marvel. And their most recent one was Black Widow, and that one was abysmal at the box office. So if the Hollywood machine of Marvel can't do it, it kind of makes it harder to justify with how a more niche Bible film can do it. And this brings me to my next point, where I think it has to do a lot more with money, right? For a TV production movie to be made, you don't need to deal with as much with big Hollywood studios. The budgets are going to be a lot smaller, a lot easier to justify, and still reach a wide audience. I think particularly with TV productions, they're easy to be dispersed at a low cost, allowing for people to be evangelized more easily. Particularly, I find that a lot of Sunday schools nowadays seem to be showing these television productions to kids when showing the story of the Bible, which really kind of shows that maybe that's more of their intention, just spreading the story through a new medium with low stakes, that a big blockbuster Hollywood movie doesn't necessarily guarantee in terms of money. And just to kind of highlight that point, I'm going to bring up some of the box office budgets for other more recent modern Bible films within the last few years. Passion of the Christ made a great box office in 2004, but I don't think a Bible film, from what I was looking at, since then has really created a lot of profit. One Night with the King, like I said, did not break even. Another well-known one is 2014's Exodus. And this movie only made $68 million over its budget, which is not a lot. The same year, Noah in 2014 made $199 million in profit, which is actually really good, don't get me wrong. But here's my point, where in that same year that Noah came out and made almost $200 million in profit, the Guardians of the Galaxy also came out and made $541 million in profit. Gone Girl came out in 2014. Its budget was $61 million compared to $160 million that the Epic of Noah made, and it still out-earned Noah. With a budget of $61 million for production, Gone Girl made a profit, so plus more of what they spent, of $308 million in profit, compared to Noah that made $199 million. So I think it really says a lot about how it's harder for studios to fund these niche Bible movies revolving around female leads when the entire genre as a whole doesn't seem to be as profitable as other genres. And I'm really focusing on the concept from Reinhardt's readings in here, where film is a commercial art, right? And genres are created because films are about creators trying to economize their product. They're trying to use these proven formulas to get these guaranteed profits and make a killing and line their pockets, right? And currently, Hollywood as a whole is finding that male lead movies profit more than female leads. So they don't want to mess with the formula. And now you're going to amplify that fact with a genre film, which would be in this case Bible films, where they're already going to be making less money for doing Bible films. And you're going to make it more risky for them financially by saying, let's make it a female lead. It's just hard to justify. It's an unfortunate thing. I think that there could be a lot of benefit to it. We've all seen the story of Jesus. Do we really need another Jesus story? Why don't we spread the word about cooler stories, about stories that people don't know about in the Bible, and frame them not necessarily just in a super Christian evangelical way, but make it a period drama. There's nothing wrong with doing that, because that would be more palatable to larger screens or larger audiences. So yeah, that's just my analysis for today. I had a lot of fun doing this. I had kind of in mind what I was going to do when I first started this. I thought it was going to be a lot more about the Virgin Mary, very, very particularly, and very particularly within the Hispanic community. But I ended up doing something a lot larger because it just seemed like, why is it always TV? Why is it always TV? Why is it never Hollywood? Because all these bigger religious movies aren't even from Hollywood most of the time. They tend to be from foreign studios and from foreign producers. So that's a question for another day. But yeah, thank you so much. I had a lot of fun doing this, and I hope y'all have a good day.